Today we're going to be talking about the connected utility. Really what it's all about is the right technology, the right customer, and the right point of contact. How do we make that all work in a world where everyone's talking about digitization and new systems, new operational capabilities, and pervasive IT? So we have a distinguished panel, and one thing I've learned over the many panels that I have moderated is that I'm really lousy at introducing people and even pronouncing their names correctly. So I now outsource that to my panelists. So if we can start, actually right here, Debbie, with you, if you can introduce yourself, talk a little bit about what you do, and what are the problems you're trying to solve, and then we'll roll it down all the way down the line here to Kim, Jane, and Peter. At least I get the first names right.
That's
so
good
please.
Because my last name is Kimberly, and we have.
Oh, did I say? There you go. See,
so,
I got that wrong.
So
yeah.
you had obvious potential to get things mixed up.
See that? I proved my.
You
I proved my
avoided
point.
by allowing us to do self-intros. So my name is Debbie Kimberly. I'm the Vice President of Customer Energy Solutions for Austin Energy. I've been with the company for about 3.5 years, and before that I worked for almost 30 years for a large public power utility called Salt River Project. They're located in Phoenix, Arizona. And I think it's probably one of the most fascinating and exciting times to be involved in this business. And why is that? Well, I've been working now, as you can tell, I probably started when I was about 10, for over 30 years. But anybody that was born after 1983 or thereabouts, how many of you in this audience were born after 1983? It's right up here, I can't see y'all. I see a hand in the back, good for you. So, you have been connected since birth, all right? I've got kids. They've been connected since birth. And we as utilities have the opportunity, I think, to reach out and talk to our customers in the community in a way that we've never had before, in a near real-time way, using devices that our customers use, and frankly, using language that our customers prefer to be communicated in. I run the energy efficiency, demand response, distributed solar programs, as well as handling the key accounts function, the data analytics function, green building, electric vehicles, and emerging tech. And so it's just a playground for me. I love it. I love Austin, and I'm so happy that you all are here for this exciting conference.
Well, I am Kim Shumway. I'm the Executive Vice President for Partner Services and Business Development at AllConnect. I'll tell you guys a little bit about AllConnect because we are not an energy or a utility company. As the name suggests, we're in the business of connecting consumers with products and services. And in some ways, we're not the buyer of those products, and we're not the seller of those products. Our job is, in fact, connecting them and creating experiences where consumers can look at all of their choices and connect their homes in a very simplified, consultative type way. We spent a lot of time and frankly money on a sales and marketing platform that really enables that whole conversation with the consumer. And there's certainly pieces of that that are powered by BI and analytics. Certainly technology, of course, is always in there. And really a lot of people. Some of these services are very complex, and the choices are getting more and more pushed to that consumer. So we help them sift through all of those types of decisions. It's interesting, our catalog of products is about 13,000, believe it or not. And really, though, our muse, for lack of a better word, is not the actual products themselves, but the experiences we deliver and the engagement with consumers that really creates lasting loyalty for our partners, such as utilities. Real quick, and then I'll pass it on, just to give you guys some context and kind of piggyback on what was said earlier. I've been with the company for about 9 years. 9 years ago, connecting your home, 25% of consumers were actually buying landlines. And the most complex decision you had to make was, you know, am I going to be in the phone book, voicemail, et cetera, et cetera. I think we all know times have changed, right? So we've helped consumers through dial-up internet to huge fiber networks. We've helped them through entertainment that comes from a rocket ship that, you know, sits in the satellite sky. And our growing portfolio, we talk to about 20 million consumers every year. Our growth portfolio, interestingly enough, is energy. 42% of the consumers that we engage with every year want to know about their choices, want to know how they can save money, want to know how they can save the planet. And so now, interestingly enough, we're not connecting anybody to those phone lines anymore unless it's a mobile device, but about 25% we're offering them things like community solar, demand response, wind, surge protection for all those connected things that they've spent time on. And so it's a really exciting time for you guys, certainly, and we're just excited to kind of have a front row seat to all that consumer engagement and the emergence of all these products.
Great. So my name is Jane Park. I'm the Vice President of Regulatory Policy and Strategy at Commonwealth Edison. We are a large utility servicing most of northern Illinois and Chicago. We have roughly 4 million customers, and about 2 million of the 4 million are already on smart meters. I think many of the folks here may have heard our CEO, Ann Pramaggiore, talk yesterday as the keynote. Some of you may be thinking, what in the world is a regulatory VP doing on this panel? As the poor woman accidentally stumbled into the wrong room. And to give myself a little bit of street cred, in a prior life and a prior role to this, I was responsible for a lot of the digital, all things with respect to the customer experience within ComEd. So this is a passion of mine, particularly as it relates to product and services development. For us at ComEd, and particularly here, you've heard Ann and others talk about how we're really redefining our business model. Maybe 5 years ago, we would have said that for a utility, we had a supply chain, very linear business model. Us as the generator, product shoots through, and you have the end user, the customer over there. I think you've heard from Ann and others how that is profoundly shifting. We're unfolding like a fan that singular physical network so that now we realize there are 3 networks at least in terms of the physical, the digital, and the social. And not only that, we're repositioning them so that they're not 3 components of a single linear line, but now they're a platform where we have more users, more transactions, and different questions. We heard that yesterday, and for a lot of what I'd like to talk about on this panel as we get into it with my colleagues is what another parallel insight that we're really starting to delve into at ComEd, which really relates to today, which is this notion of my personal energy. I know we always talk about personalization. It's one of a number of things people rattle off: control, convenience, personalized. For us, a story I like to tell is that on the customer side, we always used to go to a lot of different customer panels and focus groups when I was in my prior role. I love it. There is nothing better than sitting in a room, whether it's behind the glass or with customers, really just sort of bouncing ideas and questions off of them. We found that our senior executives often got that insight 3 or 4 times hearsay, in a report summarizing a report summarizing a report. So once we actually brought to them a video clip of exactly what these people were really saying. And the silence in the room, I thought, was pretty profound. Because you had the man on the screen essentially say, look, let's just face it. I don't understand when you talk system reliability. I don't understand what Seifi and Katie mean. But I do only care about my energy. Energy to me is very personal, so what's happening to my world? And as a result of that at ComEd, we've been trying to build out everything from personalized reliability reports to energy marketplace platforms that connect the customer to a digital grid through their online web account, through creating data systems that will help the customer take these packets and transmit them to the third party they choose, or stream it through a green button connect process. So these are some of the things we're working on to build these 3 channels in a way that really fulfills this customer vision of, hey, it's my energy, and I would like just information about myself at this stage. So that's a little bit about what we're working on. I'm going to pass it over to Peter, and then we'll mix it up.
Thank you. Peter Muhoro, Partners Electric Cooperative. We're the largest electric distribution cooperative in the U.S., headquartered about an hour west of Austin. So welcome to Texas, y'all. I'm still learning how to say that, new to Texas. But excited, I could say I've checked off something off my bucket list. I always told my mom I love being surrounded by women, and I could say I have fellow panelists who are all very powerful women, so check that box. So a little bit about us. You may have heard a little bit this morning from my boss, the CEO, that, electric co-ops cover 75% of the landmass, nearly 75% of the landmass in the U.S. Very rural areas. We've got about an area, 8,100 square miles, the size of the state of Massachusetts, although we still look small in Texas. Everything in Texas is bigger. So, and unlike my colleagues here, we face a lot of interesting challenges where we've got some dense areas, but I've got areas where I've got 2 meters to a mile. And so when I start looking at network operations, when I start looking at how do I leverage technology to ensure that exactly what you said in terms of a customer has no clue what SAIDI is. I mean, even some employees have no clue what SAIDI is, let's be real about it, or safety or reliability, but at the same time, they just want to know they can come home and turn on the lights. I mean, that's really what they care about. And at the end of the day, we're a member-owned electric cooperative, so my shareholders are the folks that I sell power to. So at the end of the day, I have to ensure that their needs are met, just as I would meet the needs of a shareholder. So as we look at networks, as we look at the Internet of Things, we're looking at it from a very two-pronged perspective. One is, how do we look at our operations from outages? How do I take an outage and use the capability of having a strong network to ensure that I could get out to where the outage is fast enough, taking advantage of a well-inventoried GIS system that can locate every single thing, every pole, every transformer, whatever the case is. How do I take advantage of an automated vehicle locator that could get that vehicle to where the outage is the easiest, at the same time thinking of automating it all where I reduce the number of people who are involved in that transaction. So I could take the network from that perspective and really look at how I boost up my operations from that end. I can look at how I look at the benefits of distributed energy resources and how I can get down to, and I'm sure we'll get a little bit into this, my market pricing signal. What am I getting out of it? And what do those at the end of the line, as I think of a time of use rate, and as at one point, which excites me, one day that we could get into a very transactive energy perspective, how does that play out? And then the very last piece of it is I look at how do the end consumer, what are they benefiting from this whole system and what do they get out of it, including we live in a day and time where if you look at access to broadband services, it's very similar to the days in the 1930s where you would not get electricity in the rural areas. So as I look at building out a network, I start asking myself, the incumbents, those telecom folks, and if you're in here and offended, I'm glad you are, because maybe you'll come walk with us. But just like the IAUs that never wanted to get out to the rural areas back in the 30s and the 40s and 50s, it's a similar thing now with when you talk of a gigabit speed kind of thing. And so how do we leverage that network to bring more to those members that we serve and help to improve the quality of life? So a whole bunch of things. I'm sure this is going to be exciting. I hope we can agree on everything and disagree at least on one thing, because it makes it a little bit of fun.
Thank you. Oh, and why am I the moderator? I've moderated here before. My background is I used to be in competitive power markets. My name is Peter Kelly Detweiler. I also write for Forbes.com, and I have a chance to interview some of the most interesting CEOs and thought leaders in the industry and try and distill all of that. And speaking with folks at panels like this is a fantastic opportunity to hear more about what's going on in the space and where it's headed. I also headed Constellation's demand response group, so I did suffer a lot of the pangs and pains that you all have suffered. And one of the questions that we were always trying to solve, and it's certainly come up in this conversation, is so you have these customers who want this personalized experience. You're all delivering it in different ways. You're delivering it when a customer moves from location A to location B. You're helping them figure out how to reconnect with the new utilities and so on. You're offering IT solutions in other situations. You're working on dropping costs with your IT platform, outage reduction, and so on. And you've got your connected thermostats, which are helping people interact with the grid. How do you deal, though, with the fact that we have prices which are different locationally everywhere, whether or not customers yet see them, and we have usage which varies? So we've got prices that vary in usage, and we talk about a green button, right? Oh, green button, everyone sees their hourly usage and they get it in a packet. That's like me getting a car and someone finally gave me a rear view mirror. That's not so good unless I'm driving backwards, right? So how do you move forward that next step and say, okay, we're going to personalize that customer experience, and we're going to give people more control. We're going to give them visibility, some kind of dashboard in terms of the price environment they may or may not be exposed to, and what I can do about it. How do you think about that? Peter, and you're dealing with this ginormous area there in Pedernales, right? What's the conversation within the co-op about how you engage the customer and empower them at that level?
I guess it turns out to be quite an interesting discussion. Now, you hit on something right. We've got very urban areas as we look at the Oak Hill, Cedar Park, and where we could have anywhere from 40 meters to a mile kind of thing. And then I've got the 2 meters to a mile. Two very separate customers, very different, and how we transact with them can be very different. In fact, how you implement certain programs can be very costly in one area versus not as costly in another area. And what being a cooperative and being a member-owned, we look for equitable systems throughout our territory. Some of the challenges that we face and the way we see addressing this, this notion of personalized, everyone wants to have a say in their energy use, but at the same time, they don't know how to go about it, they don't understand it. We look at the idea of how do we educate folks on their usage. And so I think there's so much value in taking the rearview mirror and looking back and saying, this was my usage. But that never means anything unless I could say, if it was June at 4:30 p.m. and this was what the market price looked like, what would that, if I was to translate that true cost to you as an end user, you have to remember here in ERCOT, about 10% of my budget annually is looking at just cost of transmission defined by 15 minutes in June, 15 minutes in July, same in August and September. That is defining. So if I can't educate folks on what happens in between that, I tell them 10% of our budget is just going to that. So by even showing some of that, being able to show what the cost would have looked like, and then saying, what if you had adjusted your thermostat? So now you start saying, what would the future look like if I changed how I utilize my energy? We're in the process of actually creating this time of use calculators and that show you how, if you were to do things differently, what your cost would truly be. And the moment we get to that point, we believe that that level of engagement begins to say, well, what do I need to do differently? And that's where we say, well, we'd like to come offer a free energy audit to your home. And we're 90% residential, so we've got a lot of homes, and we do free energy audits, and we give them a nice 25-page report that really shows everything about your home and what you can start doing. Highlight on things like solar. Would solar make a difference if you were to install solar? What if you were to do something with a thermostat? And so you have to take a step back to take a look at the rear view and then kind of flip it around to say, now what would the future look like? And by the end of that conversation, our energy advisors can walk out of there with someone saying, maybe my next investment should be solar, or dang it, I gotta fix my windows, or I gotta do something like that. But you get away from it becomes tangible at that point. So now they understand the usage. And so then when we begin to send certain signals of saying, between 3 and 5, if you could do X, Y, and Z, as we look at a very strongly optimized demand response program, and we're taking a very holistic view of this, tying in with several other things, then at that point, we've already covered the rearview mirror and they fully understand where they came from, and we think that they can see the future a lot easier.
Thank you. So, Kim, you have, 50 million customers or something like that? Okay. And people move around all the time in today's world. So they move from location A to location B in another state.
Yep.
And they've got to reconnect their whole ecosystem
The
of
whole
all
thing.
the services they get.
Yep.
How does All Connect help customers understand if they move to Pedernales or wherever?
Sure.
That what services are available, what information is available, what tools are available to
Right.
personalize their experience there in a way that may have been different from where
From
they moved,
somebody
but
else.
still lets
Yeah.
them build their new ecosystem.
So I'll tell a story. I'll actually tell my story. So I moved from Chicago to Atlanta, Georgia, about 5 years ago. And I'm sure it's not a surprise, I use All Connect to do that. but it was an interesting process that I think will give you guys some context around how this works. So moving from Chicago to Atlanta, the first thing I did to connect my home was call Georgia Power, because that's my power company in that area, and they started my service. But what was interesting is during that conversation with Georgia Power, because I was moving, they asked me about a home audit. Because what a great time to do the audit before my 2 kids, my dog, and all my stuff is in my house, right?
Yeah.
So that's perfect. And I said, absolutely. Then they said, you know what? You can talk to some other company that we partner with and they can connect the rest of the services for your home. I said yes, I knew that was us. But I'll just walk you through it. In Georgia, gas is deregulated. I didn't know that. I wouldn't have known that I could shop. I didn't have to go to the incumbent. So AllConnect walked me through all the choices, all the different price points. What is a therm? Even though I'm in this industry, I'm not going to say I'm an expert on the therm. And that whole process. At that point, they walked me through, hey, you're probably going to need some things from a home services company. Do you want to enroll in getting some savings from somebody like Home Depot? In my mind, I say yes, because I know I'm moving. My house is built in 1968, and I'm probably going to want a smart thermostat of some sort. They help me connect my internet. They help me connect my entertainment. And then I get off the phone. In that time frame as a consumer, moving is stressful. Anybody here ever moved? You're usually moving because of a job, because of a marriage, because of a kid, because of something, right? And that was my initial interaction. But what was interesting is that's just the beginning of a relationship. I'm going to need things for about 60 days. Now, that's my experience as a consumer. For Georgia Power, think about this. You get one chance to really make an impression with a customer that's new. And not only were they able to start my service, give me a home energy audit, but I'll also partner with somebody who's going to help me connect everything else. I bought my Nest thermostat from the Home Depot. I got a rebate from Georgia Power, really powered by AllConnect. Right? And so what you start to see is connectivity between these things. Back to the question you asked Peter, I do think knowledge is power for both consumers and utilities as far as how do I really get control. But I do think there's this whole conversation with the consumer in extracting from them what do they value about these products and services. How do you present them in a way that is going to be personal, right? So, we talk about time of use plans. That doesn't necessarily mean anything to a consumer. That could scare a lot of people. That sounds a little scary, right? But if you think about other industries, consumers are very used to variable pricing. You got variable pricing on your mobile phone. You got variable pricing on, your internet. How much are you using? What speed? Those 13,000 SKUs are largely because at this household you can get one thing, and the household next door from a telecommunications you might not be able to. That network may not be built out. So it's almost like you have to shift your thinking, really get into the customer's view of things, and instead of worrying about the products, right? We tend to worry about the products. Really start thinking about how do I help them save time? How do I help them protect? How do I help them take action? What we have found is, another example, a utility came to us. They had a goal to get their time of use, they need 10,000 people on it. Mm-hmm. They also have these smart thermostats. They've been using all their traditional channels, bill inserts, billboards, not getting a lot of action on it. We said, hey, let us design some programs from you. You don't have to build the platform. You don't have to distract your operation, right? Because they have all these other things they need to do. We'll create some test scenarios. We'll create some scripting. We'll talk to some customers, and let's figure out what they really value. Through that process, we were able to get 30% of the people we talked to enroll in the smart rate or the time of use rate, get the smart thermostat, which helps them manage their behavior. So these two things, right, are very connected. So you're not just giving them a pricing plan, which clearly helps you guys in certain situations with margin and all that fun stuff, but now you're giving them a tool where they can actually see their behavior and react to it. And we found it to be pretty powerful.
So that's customer psychology.
If I could just
Yeah,
touch on
yeah,
something just to
yeah.
add on to that, I thought it was
Yeah.
really keen that you touched on it. On any given day, we're not getting calls, someone saying, I came home, the lights came on, thank you for doing your job.
Right.
We get the calls when the power's out.
Right.
That's just the nature of the business. So when you have that one moment of how do you engage your consumer, you want to make sure
First
that
impression,
you
what
want
do
to
you
do
want?
it right. And so I think that that's really key as we think of even the future and what kind of programs we roll out. It's the constant thing of, if I only have this member for 8 seconds, can I really give them the impression that they want to consider some of this? And so I think that you touched on it very right on in what we experience as it is.
So one of the things we hear a lot of times is that our goal is to delight our customers. So at ComEd, can you walk me through a day where a customer, could be a C&I, commercial, industrial, or a residential customer, is delighted? How, in a perfect world with a suite of tools that you offer for a customer that wants to engage, and not all of them do, right? Some just are going to always
Yep,
pay their
that's true.
bills. Some people do not want to become energy literate. But for the ones who can, what does that delighted customer day look like?
So that's a great question, because I would say that even to start out, I completely agree with this comment about starting to understand the customer interaction with us as not just a one-shot when your power's on or off. And within ComEd, we have literally mapped out what the entire customer journey is. This is very common in the industry now for almost anybody who thinks about customer experience. It's not only the start-stop, it's the bill pay, it's the outage, it's the maintenance, it's the field visit.
It's the education.
Exactly. And for purposes of delighting the customer, my first reaction when I heard you, Peter, was, it's so funny because it depends on the customer. In the prior panels, I think
Yep.
we heard the CEO of CenterPoint Energy talking about the micro-segmentation of our customers. And that is so important to understand on why you need to have many different channels to delight different customers. So for example, you may have a customer who doesn't really want to have any interaction with you. He may have downloaded the mobile app and the weather is very spotty that day, and you've sort of seen a situation now where, okay, I've signed up for the preference center, so we built a preference center so customers could tell us, hey, you may not want us to call you. How do you want us to contact you? So I, as a customer, have chosen, Jane's chosen my iPhone. And so now I get a push notification that says, we have storm activity and you have an outage. Okay, good. That's a good day for me. I didn't have to do anything and that information was delivered straight to me. Now let's say an hour goes by and, I want to just double check, is this still happening? Or maybe I talk to my neighbor or my daughter who doesn't have necessarily push notifications on, and she wants to know if she can basically figure out if her power is out. Thanks to AMI, we have now integrated a ping function so that you as the customer can just go on your iPhone and ping to see whether your meter is on or off. You can find out without making a call and interacting with our service center whether your power is on or off, and you can do a check on whether it's the meter or whether it's something else that's electrical. And by that time, you've basically spent maybe 2 minutes of your day tops to figure out whether your power's on or off, whether we're working on it, and we've reached out to you. That's one measure of delight for one customer. Another customer, and I'm going to use my friend Veronica Gomez, really smart lady. She's our Deputy General Counsel and the head of all litigation for Exelon, quite frankly. And she once said to me when we were having lunch, Jane, I got to tell you, I know you do all of this customer service stuff, and I came home one day to a high bill, and I could not understand what was driving that bill because I was on vacation the whole period the prior month. And I went to your website, and I could not find a single place where I could understand what I could do to control that energy in terms of products that I could buy, and I'm just not sure what is out there to advise me. And that single conversation helped us develop something which we're working on now, which is an energy marketplace of sorts that hopefully will be driven over time by predictive analytics. So not just the data that we're talking about, but how do we, as you all know in this room better than I, how do we bring analytics to it so that you get the information you may need when you see that high bill usage for people that are like you from a data perspective? What types of tools do you need? And then you go to a platform where you learn. Veronica is not the kind of lady who's going to pick up the phone and want to talk to somebody after waiting in a queue. She's the kind of woman who, for her, delight is, you told me exactly what I want, you got me through a platform you've created that helps me figure it out, and now, hey, I didn't even know I could get premium power here. I didn't know I could install DER, and so I'm learning about that. And so for us, in the future, a delightful customer moment is going to be one where we deliver to the customer the information they are looking for, and we have a pretty good guess as to what that might be, thanks to the power of predictive analytics.
Thank you. Speaking of delightful, I had a conversation with Debbie about thermostats in Austin, and it's not something I knew a whole lot about, frankly. And this migration from unidirectional utility control to something where the entire dynamic changed. Can you enlighten us a little bit about that migration and then tell us the story that starts with the Mark Twain quote?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, and I'm going to append on that last comment because my delightful moment is making it easy and pleasant to do business with Austin Energy. And to your point, that is doing business at 10 o'clock at night,
Anytime.
sitting on your sofa with your laptop, wearing your fuzzy slippers while you're binge watching House of Cards, okay? And to be able to communicate with the utility. So I just revealed what I like to binge watch.
Yes.
I too am a House of Cards.
Me too.
All right, good. See, once again, we have unanimity of opinion on your panel. So Austin Energy is really fortunate because we serve a customer base that's diverse, and we've been playing in the energy efficiency and demand response space for a long, long time, 30 years. Let me be clear. Customers don't care to know about energy efficiency and demand response. And I don't sell an energy efficiency.
Right.
I can't sell something that customers can't see. What I'm going to sell is home comfort. I'm going to sell savings, and I'm going to sell value, and that entails choice. So back in 2001, to your point, Peter, Austin Energy said, you know, we need to be able to reduce our need to either build new generation or to purchase generation because, just to put this in perspective, right now in the current ERCOT market, so that is our own ISO, if you will, the peak price of power, it's an energy-only market, capacity is built into that, is, does anyone know, it's $9,000 a megawatt hour. So convert that, I can do simple math on this one in my head, that's $9 a kilowatt hour. $9 a kilowatt hour.
And your average wholesale price is around 4 cents.
Yes.
So.
And as a residential customer, my all-in rate is going to be somewhere between 9 to 13 cents a kilowatt hour. So imagine if that customer had to pay $9 a kilowatt hour. So we started with this program. It was a one-directional free thermostat program. They were all little white boxes. Gave them away to customers. At its peak, we had 90,000 of our residential customers that had these free thermostats. That's huge when you consider our customer base right now is a little over 400,000 customers, 360,000 of those are residential customers. And so what we do with those one-way thermostat signals is we'd send a signal during those 4 coincident peaks, those 4 summer months, wanting to hit the highest priced moment in the ERCOT market just during the summer, and we'd cycle their air conditioning units, okay, during 15 minutes. And we made it very, very difficult. This was the complete antithesis to making it easy and pleasant to do business with Austin Energy. If you wanted to override that, you had to jump through hoops big time. You had to pick up the phone. You had to try to get through to us. We would then put through a signal to override that. Does that leave a really good experience with customers? No. And guess what? The contractors didn't like those thermostats either. So when they would go out, sometimes taking advantage of our programs and replacing air conditioning equipment, they'd take them out. So we estimate we probably have about 50 to 60,000 of those thermostats out there right now. We don't really know unless we play around and send an all, I got to do this on my second day at work, send an all drop signal to see how many responded. I felt like for once I had power, you know. I was able to cycle 50,000 air conditioning units just to see how it worked.
Everybody's dream.
I know,
Yeah.
I know. But here's the thing, customers like choice. I like choice, right? I like to choose what type of a cell phone I'm going to purchase. I like my choice of internet suppliers. I like my choice of what I watch on TV. And by the way, I'm usually not watching it on my TV. I'm watching it on my tablet. And my kids, don't try to explain it to me, are watching it on their phones. How you can watch House of Cards on a phone is beyond me. Nonetheless, we said, you know what, customers want choice. And there were now all of these new models out there that were two-way communicating thermostats. So we said, bring your own thermostat. And if you already have one of those installed, guess what? We'll pay you a rebate for participating in our program. And guess what? We're not going to call it demand response, which sounds like we demand that you respond. Does that resonate? I mean, in a marketing sense, does that? No. It's going to be your bring your own thermostat program, and we can help you save on your electric bill because we're in fact saving. So we set up this program. We had 3 vendors and 14 models when we rolled the program out in the summer of 2013. And we met our annual goal in the first 2 months. That was a high-grade problem because we really weren't expecting the inundation of demand that we got. And it's enabled through something that's now ubiquitous, which is it was a cloud-hosted service. So rather than running this off of the servers that were located within our offices, we worked with those vendors, and those vendors are paid a small incentive each year to maintain the relationship with the customer and to facilitate the interaction. And when we call those events, they respond within 30 minutes. So in our very first year, with only a partial year under our belts, we saved $500,000. So not too bad when you consider that Austin Energy is a $1.4 billion a year in terms of revenue company. So not bad, and customers had choice. And customers suddenly became the advocates for our program. So instead of us selling the program, they were selling the program. And guess what? Yet more, when you've got a Google/Nest that is now out there marketing your program as they roll out Google Fiber through fiber hoods in Austin, and they are saying, we'll give you a free Nest thermostat, and here Austin Energy has this program where you can get a rebate in addition to the discounted price of the thermostat. That's a co-branding opportunity, big time. So it's been a huge success. We are now at roughly, I would say, 10,000 of those thermostats and going like gangbusters. We just added 2 more models to the mix. And we estimate, based on the conversations we've had with Honeywell and Nest, there are about 40,000 two-way communicating thermostats just for those 2 makers alone within our service territory. Now, if I can take that model and then monetize those savings and bid it into ERCOT, and I am a recovering pointy-headed finance person, and make money off that then goes, because we're public power, there's no incentive for us to make a profit, to reduce customer prices yet more, that's great news. But every time you launch something like this, you discover something that was the story which he teased out of me a couple of nights ago. He said, so what is the story if I have to ask you to reveal all, Debbie? And I said, every now and then when you launch a new product, you're kind of surprised about some of the things that happen. I used to spend about 5 weeks a year in San Francisco. It's my favorite place, I confess. I love Austin, but I love San Francisco. And it was Mark Twain that said, the coldest I've ever been was the summer I spent in San Francisco, right? Something like that.
Coldest winter I ever spent, I think.
Summer in San Francisco. Or just that effect.
Yeah.
So imagine, have any of you ever moved your thermostat when you moved across the country? Well, if the thermostat costs $250, you do move.
BYOT.
BYOT, So, I mean, I would never have thought of taking my thermostat off the wall or putting a sign on when I'm hosting an open house that says, thermostat does not convey. I mean, would you think of that? Anyway, so fast forward another year, and we got random calls. I'm in San Francisco because people are getting these notices on their mobile devices. why are you adjusting my thermostat in San Francisco? I don't
Isn't that
need
cool?
you adjusting my thermostat because I'm actually using heat right now. So why are you adjusting my cooling settings? So that was one of those, one of those little aha moments. And so for all I know, we've been adjusting thermostats in Chicago and Atlanta,
And, you know,
and maybe even in
all I can
Fredericksburg.
all I can
Always keep the
say
heat
is
up
thank
is
God John Kelly didn't bring it on the space station. You know?
Oh,
Can I just,
Yeah,
can I
please.
just weigh in though, because that's a great story and that's a great point. This thermostat story, especially the BYOT, which is what we kind of call Barrero thermostat in ComEd, that's a great example of an alignment of something that is both pro-customer experience, but also sets you up foundationally for a potential shift in the business model, as I've indicated, from linear supply chain to platform.
Yep.
We've run pilots with Nest and with Comcast Xfinity, and we have a peak time savings program, and we try to do this type of stuff. Where we ultimately want to go as a utility is to become agnostic, right, to the device that gets plugged in, and to set ourselves up and our tariffs up so that we can essentially accommodate all takers, whatever the customer wants. Good customer experience continues to position the utility as a platform play on that digital connected home side so that you just, are able to deliver value and build your business model at the same time. I love that example.
and what I would like to be able to do in terms of dealing with our customers and going back to my simplistic, I want to make it easy and pleasant to do business with us, is to just give them one portal through which they can interact with us for all different sorts of services. Because I don't know about you, I can't remember a whole bunch of passwords, and they tell me it's not a good idea to write them down. So I don't want to have our customers come in through all of our various services.
Right.
So again, given my business, what I try to do every day is take myself out of my little geeky utility spot and to put myself in the shoes of being a customer who really doesn't want to think about their electricity bill. They really don't want to think about energy versus demand. They just want to be comfortable. They want to be able to do business in their own terms. And you want to be able, as you said, from that first interaction, to be able to knock it out of the park with the customer.
The only other thing I would add, though, is that to the extent this panel is titled Empowering Customers to Basically Engage with a Network of Networks, I think the thermostat interconnection is something that folks have been thinking about for a little bit of time, sure.
Right.
Now, we haven't mastered, but now it's the DER and the EV and the line of control through as we start seeing the rise of prosumers. And so these same questions of how do we create a platform that's agnostic to the DER device that wants to get plugged in, just part of the question we have for ourselves.
Yeah, those are just going to multiply.
Right, exactly.
To your point, we received an ARPA-E grant a few summers ago where we were able to go in through a single portal and control not just thermostats, but electric vehicle charging and water heaters.
That's great.
So, to be able to do all of that when you consider, we've studied this, we've got legions of people that look at load shapes. So we know how we can leverage that value yet more and avoid that $9 a kilowatt hour peak that occurs during here, could occur during 4 months of the year.
Well, I have to say, having friends like Austin Energy next to us, it's great you learn from some of the experiences. We actually took a step back in designing our programs and really started to ask, what does our member what does that person really care for? And in reality, and then we said, what are the utility needs? Then how do we find that place that we all, so for example, I can control a thermostat, but is that where I get the best value, or maybe some voltage optimization on that feeder that's serving maybe 300, rather than doing the thermostat, might actually be where I get the most value at that given time. And so I think as a utility, you begin to empower your consumers by strongly stepping back and saying, what is your need? And what is our need? And then saying, we're actually going to do this, that it still gives you, those 100 and some change days in the summertime. And I'll tell you, I didn't think I'd make it through my first summer here, but I did. And so, you don't want someone messing with your air conditioning. And I'll tell you, the Texan independence is a big thing, so you don't mess with Texans at all. And so, but really going back to how you really figure out your holistic system, creating systems where I was getting overwhelmed and thinking, how many different websites are we going to have? And
Yeah.
do we have to create different apps? And I'm thinking, come on, folks, let's think of one holistic way. And so this is one of the reasons why we took a step back to say, let's rethink this, and let's rethink the true member experience as they go through their everyday. How does this play out? Because we see a future we know, as you look at more predictive analytics and really understanding usage, as you look at electric vehicle charging, more distributed energy resources, it's just going to get more complex.
Yep.
So it's a matter of take a step back to find the most reliable and easiest solution that regardless whatever the technology comes in, it fits in right away.
My favorite panels are the ones where I feel like if I just slipped off and came back an hour later, maybe with a bottle of wine and 4 more glasses, they'd still be talking and having a great conversation.
It is water. I just have to specify that.
We could start with that. I'd like to open it up. We've got about 15 minutes left. I want to make sure we honor your participation out there, that you're here. And if there are questions you want to ask our distinguished guests, if you can raise your hands, and I will try and identify who you are out there. And yeah, we got one over there, a gentleman in the back.
My name's Joseph Weinstein. I had a question for Austin Energy. So when you collect the data for the Nest, who actually gets to see that data?
So in terms of the Nest data, we collect the information. I mean, the customer can actually see. They have the ability to see the data, but we bring that in-house so that we have the ability to see all of the data and the ability to, first of all, there is an obligation on the part of the, for example, Nest, Google, to hit our coincident peaks. So we work through them, and so we can hold them accountable, and if they don't hit our coincident peaks, then we have a, what shall I say, a focused discussion with our partner. So we are communicating back and forth with them, but we're also communicating with the customer. So the customer now, and I didn't really focus on this, your point's a good one, it's a much easier opportunity for the customer to see that on a real-time basis and to override it. But here's the interesting thing. We probably have no more than 10 to 15% of our customers that override those temperature settings, which only occur right now during the summer months, and they only occur, as I said, during times when we're hitting the peak, and it's only adjusting for about 3 degrees. And I can't tell in my house a 3-degree difference. I won't speak to my husband's detection because we do play thermostat wars in the Kimberly household. So. Is that responsive to your question? Okay.
Well, I think if I could just touch a little bit on that, because it's a discussion that just came up recently in terms of data, where if we were to go with Nest, for example, at what point is Google using that data for their own personal business? And so it raises an interesting discussion from a cybersecurity standpoint, from usability, and I think from a shared data kind of thing, and who has what right to use what. And I know it was a very interesting discussion. I will not say what room the discussion happened in, but because everyone has their own idea, and I think at any point where you feel like your data is going to someone else, I mean, not sure about you guys, but I could talk about wanting a new car right now, and then I get on Facebook and I get like an ad for a new car, and you're kind of thinking, how did that data go from that to that? And so I think it's an interesting question with this, and that interaction of the customer and how they feel about their data. Something that I think will still be challenges that we face in the future as we address more and more of these resources that come in.
Absolutely.
Well, I would say that that question of access to data, sharing data, privacy, and security, I'm going to put my regulatory hat on now for a minute. That is conversations that are happening, I think, with regulators and stakeholders in many states. In Illinois, we have open dockets right now where we are collectively with stakeholders and our regulators trying to fashion the data framework. What are going to be the rules? What does consent look like? What does authorization look like? Who's going to be liable at the end of the day? So these are great questions, and I don't want people to feel like they're not the focus of hard work right now. They are.
Yeah.
Any other questions out there? Okay, then I've got one.
Are you going to ask for more stories?
I always love more stories. If someone has one, volunteer. But you mentioned, Peter, with your proximity next to Austin Energy, that you pick up some ideas. And I'm curious, aside from coming to opportunities like this one, where do you create the cross-pollination capability so that each one of you is not learning in an isolated laboratory, but and Kim, it strikes me you can be the cross-pollinator because you're jumping across all these different places and gaining these different experiences. So how does that happen? How do you avoid? I mean, I think it would be brilliant to reinvent the wheel. I would feel awesome that I did it, because how cool would that be? But what a waste. So how do you keep from reinventing the wheel? How do you pass that information along and grow off of each other's experiences?
I think he said Peter.
All right. Well, first of all, I'll start with just co-ops in general.
Yeah.
One of the guiding principles, cooperatives have 7 guiding principles, and one of them is cooperatives cooperate, and that's principle number 6. Don't ask me about the other ones, but and that is a key thing that we're always able to share, and we gladly, I have no problem getting on the phone with someone and sharing what our experiences are, what we did right, what we did wrong, and how we go about it. But I think, in the case of, for example, with Austin Energy, I know how to get a hold of Debbie, I know how to get a hold of many of her staff and other folks at the utility. But I think where it really brings value is folks like All Connect, or I'll give an example of a project called the Open Field Messaging Bus that's SGIP's somewhat helping to orchestrate that, but you're bringing industry in and then utilities in to have a discussion on what does communications look like for a microgrid. And so that is a place now you begin to not only understand the relationships with the industry, the vendors and everyone else, but as well as other utilities. And in reality, if we could all figure out a way to do it that works for all of us, I think all our lives would be a lot easier. And so that's where I see we can leverage some of these things, is where we all come in. At the end of the day, I'm not really, the only competition I have with Austin is I want to see my rates look lower than them, and that's about the only competition. And so, and we're getting there, and it's so.
Oh, a friendly challenge, I need to say. All right, but ours just dropped again.
We're making an announcement tomorrow.
They're gonna drop again.
Just saying,
Right.
that's
Bring
how you
it
make
on, Peter.
That's where you make customers happy, is you drop your rates. But I think that so as you look at all of that, none of us are really trying to compete for anything that, if we can make it easier where we're all using a similar platform, where All Connect, for example, is the one designing something that we're all using as an example, then the cost of acquisition gets lower. It's we all in the same systems. The industry can develop something that actually works better for everyone, and I think that's where you really build off of this.
Let me answer this slightly differently in terms of not knowledge share between utilities. One thing that we're pretty sure of at ComEd when you're entering this tech space is 100-year utilities probably not going to be as fast or as good as some of the techies and entrepreneurs and software developers in this crowd. We've heard commentary from folks, Commonwealth Edison, I know many utilities, they're like these big entities. It's like knocking on the mothership. Where's the front door, right? Yeah. So what we've tried to do in order to bring in some learnings is to very formally start outreach programs like Smart Grid Exchange, and do office hours at accelerators like Energy Foundry within Chicago. So we force people to meet with the startups, and we try to give oxygen to that process. It's very hard to take an idea all the way through a regulated entity. Yep. But at least having a formal process where you can start hearing a lot of the different ideas people are thinking about helps, and that's one way you can do knowledge share.
I was going to say, interesting, and everybody's touched on it, but partnerships in some ways of some form, right? The word partnership, at its core really suggests that you are going to be sharing something, right? Sharing customers, sharing goals, sharing outcomes. And so I think you bring up a great point, which is with all this shift in technology and the markets and all that, you really do need to kind of shift your thinking along with that and start in some ways inviting others, at least to the conversation, to learn from some things. Because goodness knows, for all the great stories out there, there's several about bumping, your toe. And I think partnerships in some ways allow you to do that.
Thank you. You were going to add something.
Yeah, I want to tag on to what Jane said. It's gatherings like this, the Energy Thought Summit, it is other gatherings that occur, and we're very fortunate in Austin. We have an opportunity to share ideas. Imitation is the highest form of flattery, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we are not the founders of all things creative when it comes to energy efficiency at Austin Energy. But I think one of the things that I try to encourage with my staff in my little corner of the world that, like you say, goes all the way up, through, once you find the door in the mothership, goes all the way up, is the ability to stop thinking like a utility, and for once try to think like a consumer products company thinks. Don't measure satisfaction against other utilities. Measure satisfaction against other service providers that are completely outside your space. Do research, and just as there are issues in terms of data privacy, it's amazing how much information you can gather about the consuming public and their preferences and how they want to be communicated with, the frequency with which they want to be communicated, and try to take yourself out of that regulated utility mindset that we all have, in various shapes and forms, worked in for a long time. And I think that will be the secret sauce. And I share what you're saying, Peter. I mean, we partner with Google, but I do sometimes get not so googly-eyed about, no pun intended, about our nice, compact service territory right in the heart of Central Texas. So,
you bring up a good point about benchmarking the experience. I mean, one of the things we do is we benchmark our experience against all industries. We do not, we're kind of a little, it would be hard to find many of us, to be fair, but it's a good way to look at things, just kind of, how are we just doing compared to everybody out there?
yeah, I want to have a Nordstrom experience. I mean, not to reveal my shopping location of choice, but I do want that type of experience where, all right, so you bought it a year ago and it looks a little worn, but can we
How does
interest
it
you
make
in
people
this?
feel?
That's
And
right.
that would they recommend?
That's right.
Well, I think when I got in this industry, for the first few months, I thought part of the requirement to be in this job is you have to be able to say no at all times when someone knocks on the door. And it's, the famous line, dumb old utility guys, dogs, and they've always done things the same way for 100+ years. I think it's a great thing that we begin to change the perspective. We begin to say, let's change it. Let's challenge the status quo. Well, we've always done it this way. What if we did it this other way? And and we've experienced that in some of our programs that we've launched, and we're like, oh wait, we're not losing money. Now we're actually making money from a program that we thought was going to lose money. And so that level of thinking begins to really change your perspective and open up the doors to a lot more partnerships and collaborations and that kind of thing.
Great. Well, we're just about out of time. So what I'd like to do is ask you all, at ETS 2019, can we have a reprise of this conversation and see where we've gotten to at that point in time?
Absolutely.
Sure, sounds great.
That would be
Happy to.
excellent.
I would love to have even better rates than Debbie at that point.
That's right. You have from now
All
until
right.
then.
We've got that.
man.
We've got
It is
enough time.
on.
You can
It is
spend-
on.
Thrown down.
Meanwhile, Debbie's going to get emails from Shanghai. Hey, leave my thermostat alone.
Oh, I didn't think about that in the middle of the night, too, because,
Well, thank you all so much for a really
Thank you,
great
Peter.
conversation. I've enjoyed it, and I hope all of you have as well out there. So thank you.
thank you.